window. For now, though, the building that's directly in front of us is Old Congress Hall. So that's where the Second Continental Congress met in May of 1775, and then every Congress meeting after that, all the way until 1800, when the capital moved down to Washington, D.C. They had the Senate meet on the second floor and the House of Representatives on the first floor. That's where we get those terms, the upper and lower houses, that you might still hear today. It's also where George Washington gave up his title of the presidency to John Adams, the first peaceful exchange of power, and where Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia became states. So coming up on our left, we'll be able to see the Liberty Bell through the back window. Yeah, there she is. Isn't she beautiful? And that's the room where our founding fathers, George Washington, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and 54 others would have signed our Declaration of Independence. Old Philadelphia City Hall. This is where the Supreme Court of the United States was originally meeting until the capital moved down to Washington, D.C. We're going to get some really great views of Philadelphia's new City Hall later in this tour, but if you guys wanted to tour any of these buildings, you can do that for free. You don't even need a ticket. You just come right on over here, hop in line behind Independence Hall. You'll be able to tour City Hall and Independence Hall completely for free. Other core beliefs, they were pacifists, they believed in nonviolence and equality. In the very early days, Philadelphia is a very diverse city, religiously, racially, and socioeconomically. The colony, because his father, Sir William Penn, was admiral of England, and led to 60,000 pounds, which was an absurd amount of money in the 1600s. And then the admiral died before the superannuated debt. So instead, the king granted land to the New World to William and his Quakers, and then William Penn founded the city of Philadelphia as a colony of Pennsylvania on the basis of religious freedom and equal rights for everyone, including women. It's not that if we needed them to, but we've had a surplus of them in recent years. Like most of our federal agencies, the Mint was founded here in Philadelphia in 1792, and at that time they could produce up to 2 million coins in a year. But this mint was built in 1969, and they could produce up to 2 million coins in 1 hour. To our left-hand side down the street is the steeple for St. Augustine's Church. They were the first Catholic church, the Augustinian order, to be founded in the colony in the early 1700s. They were also featured in the movie The Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis. West Brandon. Coming up on our right-hand side, we'll see the original street marker that lets us know this used to be Sassafras Street. Here it is, coming up on our right-hand side in the corner above the dry cleaners. And then across the way is Sassafras Market, another nod to the former name of this street. Coming up on our right will be a little bar made famous by the American TV show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Coming up on our right is Patty's Pub. You guys probably will not find Danny DeVito in there, but it is still a very nice little Philly Irish bar. In front of us is the Ben Franklin Bridge. It was the longest suspension bridge of its time, the first one that connected Philadelphia to New Jersey. It came just in time for the 150th birthday of the United States in July 1926. It's 1.7 miles long. You can walk, run, bicycle, drive, or take a train over it with some beautiful views. Today it is the 57th longest suspension bridge in the world, so we've come a long way in about 100 years. Washington was a Freemason and originally wanted a 6-point star on our flag to represent the Freemasons. But Betsy Ross told him that a 5-point star was much easier for her to cut and sew consistently. So she does get the credit for putting that 5-point star on the flag. Once we move through this intersection, we're going to be passing on our left-hand side the largest Quaker meeting house in the world. It's called Arch Street Meeting House. The building was built in 1804, so the grounds have been used as a burial ground for Quakers and people of color since the early 1700s. Here it is on our left. There are no headstones here because the Quakers outlawed them in 1740, so there are 15,000 to 20,000 people buried on the grounds of the Quaker meeting house. To our right, a 9-foot tall bust of Ben Franklin. He was dedicated by the artist John Tennyson for Ben's 300th birthday. Exhibit in there right now about Civil War Reconstruction. And they have a room full of life-size sculptures of all 39 signers of our Constitution. Coming up on our right-hand side at the next corner, we'll see the African American Museum of Philadelphia, the first Those bells are part of our 1% for art law, which means that if you're going to build a new building in Philadelphia and you acquire your land through the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority, 1% of your budget for that building must go towards a work of public art. So we've had that law since 1959. That's 60 years of public art. And since then, over 300 pieces have been added, including those whispering bells, and now what we see on our left-hand side. And this is just the parking garage, guys, but all of the iridescent glass on the front is their contribution to that 1% for art law, helping to make Philadelphia so beautiful. In 2009 by the artist Ward Elliger. Each one of these dragons weighs 1,500 pounds. This project cost $300 million to install. They represent the four seasons, and they also mark the entrance to Chinatown. To our left is the fashion district with the brand new shopping mall featuring a candy-themed funhouse called Candytopia. Heading through Chinatown today, it's around 7 blocks. Home to many cultures, not just Chinese, also Japanese, Cantonese, Malaysian, Thai, Korean, Vietnamese, and many more, as well as many amazing restaurants. This part of the city tends to be open later than a lot of the rest of the areas. So if you guys are looking for some late night eats or trying to do some karaoke at a bar tonight, Chinatown is a good bet for that. In 1882, the first major immigration law was passed, and it's called the Chinese Exclusion Act. It restricted immigration from Asia all the way into 1943. During that time, Chinatown and Philadelphia became a red light district. Luckily, we've recovered since then, and it's a very safe place to be now. You can do some boutique shopping or some really delicious desserts. If you guys are trying to take pictures, you want to get your cameras ready on our right. We're going to be passing the first authentic Chinese gate built anywhere outside of China. On our right-hand side, our Friendship Gate was a gift from our sister city, Shenzhen, in 1984. The gate is 40 feet tall and weighs 80 tons. And there are no traditional building materials used in its making, meaning there are no screws, nails, glue, or duct tape holding the gate together. It's made 100% from interlocking wooden pieces, like a giant jigsaw puzzle. And in exchange for that gate, we gave our sister city, Shenzhen, a copy of our Liberty Bell. Coming up on our right is the Pennsylvania Convention Center. It is the largest downtown convention center in a major city anywhere in the United States. It takes up 3 whole city blocks or 17 football fields, whatever's easier for you guys. And it's home to the largest and longest running horticulture event anywhere in the United States. The Philadelphia Flower Show has been happening here every year since 1829. Above us and to our left is the largest ballroom on the East Coast. It's housed in the former train shed of the Reading Terminal. And then beneath it is our famous Reading Terminal Market. This is a must-see in Philadelphia. The market started out as an open-air farmer's market in the 1850s. The rail lines bought this property in 1890, and they tried to kick everybody out. The farmers and the merchants said, "No way, we were here first, we're staying." So they finally agreed to house the market underneath the first vendor who signed the new lease with the railroad in 1890. They're called Bassett's Ice Cream. They were the first commercially sold ice cream in the United States. Founded in 1861 in New Jersey. Alright, this sculpture is called World Park Orders and Perspective. This is Marriott's contribution to that 1% for art law. And it's meant to represent a room with inside of the room. I like to think it's the artist's personal interpretation of the universe. Coming up on our left-hand side, this is the old head house of the Reading Terminal. This all would have been offices for people who worked for the train lines. It was done in the Italianate style by the architect Francis Kimball. It's made out of this really gorgeous pink brick. Of course, today this is all part of the convention center. This particular building is the Hard Rock Cafe. At the corner, that is the second largest Hard Rock Cafe guitar anywhere in the world. Is Philadelphia City Hall. This was supposed to be the tallest building in the world when construction started on it in 1871. Construction on this building unexpectedly took 30 years to complete though. And so by the time it was finished in 1901, it had already been surpassed by the Washington Monument and the Eiffel Tower. All 250 statues on and around City Hall were done by one man and his associates. His name is Alexander Milton Calvert, and that includes that giant statue of our founder, William Penn, on the top. William Penn on top of Philadelphia City Hall is the tallest statue on top of any building anywhere in the whole world. He is 37 and a half feet tall, and for perspective, guys, that means that his hair is 4 feet long, and even his eyes are 1 foot wide. Beneath him, the clock face is 2 meters wider than the clock face on Big Ben at 23 feet in diameter. To our left-hand side is Macy's department store. This is actually the first department store to open in the United States, and it was founded by a man named John Wanamaker, who's coming up on our left-hand side. Foot of City Hall. He was the man who invented the price tag and the first employer to provide paid time off to his employees. Also famous for his phrase, "The customer is always right." In front of us is the Masonic Lodge of Philadelphia, made from imported Egyptian stone done in the noble style. Inside, there are 7 different halls done in 7 different architectural styles, each one with a singular flaw because the Freemasons believe that no one is perfect except God. Coming up on our right-hand side out front, we'll see 2 of our most famous Freemason founding fathers, George Washington and Ben Franklin, passing the Masonic apron. That sculpture is called the Bond. Also coming up on our right, this sculpture of mangled humans is called Government of the People, and it represents the struggle for democracy. Around it, many different kinds of game pieces, part of a 1% for art project called Your Moon. This year in 1996, that makes them as old as I am. Coming up on our right is our Love statue, our famous one. It's never as big as you think it's going to be, guys, but it is what our stop number 7 is named for. This is Love Park, and that Love statue was dedicated by the artist Robert Indiana just in time for the bicentennial in 1976. Ahead of us and to the right is Pennsylvania Railroad Suburban Station. That's a great example of Art Deco style architecture, and this building was completed in September 1930. This is where our regional rail lines come through, and if you guys wanted to, you could hop on a train here and take it out to where I live, in Manioc. Manioc is in the northwest part of Philadelphia. The word Manioc comes from a Native American word that means the place we go to drink, because it's right next to the Schuylkill River. But if you guys go out there, you will see that that is still true today. There are many great bars and restaurants on Main Street there. We're now going to be turning on to the Ben Franklin Parkway. This was the first street to go diagonally against William Penn's Bridge. It's meant to connect Fairmount Park to the rest of the city with the Art Museum at one end and City Hall at the other. To our left is the first Holocaust memorial to come to North America, and it got to Philadelphia in 1964. The parkway that we're on now was first conceptualized in the 1870s, but wasn't able to be completed until the 1920s because 1,300 buildings were destroyed to make room for this parkway. As we head up the parkway, you'll see many different countries' flags. It's not all of them, though it is 109 of them, and they represent communities that call Philadelphia home. If you're looking for your country's flag, they are all in alphabetical order. Our Israeli flag was outside of our Holocaust memorial. Our Polish flag was outside of our memorial today. So, and our Vatican City flag and our Italian flag was outside of our stop number 8, which is now coming up on our right-hand side. This is the Cathedral Basilica of St. Peter and Paul. This is the largest Roman Catholic church in Pennsylvania, made from brownstone from neighboring states, Connecticut and New Jersey. This is where Pope Francis said his Mass during his visit in 2015, also where Pope John Paul II said his Mass during his visit in 1979. The cathedral is open every day during the week until 5 p.m. If you guys want to go in, see all the beautiful artwork, stained glass, the cathedral ceiling. On the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, they have masses in here, so you can attend one if you're Catholic or curious. Just please be respectful of any services going on in here, of course. Outside, we have Sister Cities Park and the Amour statue, sister to the Love statue, done by the same artist, Robert Indiana, but for Pope Francis' visit in 2015. Sister Cities Park is named so because Philadelphia has 7 sister cities, and the Vatican City is one of them. We also have a Sister Cities Cafe here, some nice fountains, and a beautiful children's discovery garden. Coming up on our left-hand side, we'll see one of the 5 original parks placed here by William Penn. This one is called Logan Square, and it was named after his secretary, James Logan. In the center, we have Swan Fountain, named after Dr. Swan from the Fountain Society. It was dedicated in the 1920s by the artist Alexander Sterling Calder, son of the man who did all the statues on City Hall. And the 3 Native American tribes people in the center are meant to represent the 3 rivers of Philadelphia, the Schuylkill, Edgar Allan Poe's time in Philadelphia, you could visit his house just a little north of Center City in a neighborhood called Northern Liberties. And you can go in for free. They'll tell you all about Edgar Allan Poe, his time here, and all the beautiful things he wrote while he was here. So this is Camp JTD, and they are an inclusive community of unhoused people who are negotiating with Mayor Keeney and the Philadelphia Housing Authority for more equal opportunity affordable housing. The Rodin Museum has not opened back up yet since the pandemic started, but I'm hoping they'll open soon. If you guys are local or thinking about coming back to visit them, my recommendation to you would be to buy the full price ticket of our main art museum, the one directly in front of us, because that ticket costs $25, but it's good for 2 whole days, and it includes the main building, the Rodin Museum, and the Perelman building, as well as several mansions in Paramount Park. In front of us, in front of the art museum, is our Washington Monument. And he's supposed to be the most accurate depiction of George Washington that's out there today, because the artist of that sculpture used a light mask of his face, meaning that before he died, someone was casting up his face. The artist used that as well as some paintings that had already been done of Washington. I like to talk about him because he's actually facing this way, so you can see him up close a little later. Coming up on our left will be a brownstone mansion. It was owned by a German brewing family called the Bergdahl. But they must have loved America a whole lot because they named one of their children Grover Cleveland Bergdahl. But he was a troublemaker and a draft dodger during World War I. And then he hid out in this mansion for a little while before taking off to Europe. He returned shortly before World War II and he was arrested and thrown into jail. And then his family was so ashamed of him that they changed the spelling of their last name. They would no longer have to be associated with Grover Cleveland Bergdahl. And speaking of jail, guys, stop number 11, Eastern State Penitentiary, is now directly in front of us. This prison was designed by the architect John Haviland, who said that he wanted to make it so scary on the outside that you would never want to end up on the inside, and I certainly believe that to be true. This was one of the first prisons to actually make an effort at reforming its prisoners, so when it opened in 1829, nobody knew how to do that. And so they kept all of the prisoners here, solitary confinement, 24 hours a day, all the way to 19. Solitary confinement was a little bit different back then. Each cell had a skylight in it, they called the Eye of God. The prisoners each day passed before them. Each cell also had a Bible in it, so the prisoners could learn to know God and repent for their sins and their crimes. But that would not have been very effective, because most of the prisoners during that time would have been illiterate and completely unable to read the Bible. If you visit the prison, you would have the opportunity to tour the cell that belongs to their most famous inmates, and also home. You stay there after the Valentine's Day Massacre while he was playing level and lunch with other times and all that. But he lived much differently from the rest of the prisoners. He had Persian rugs, artwork, and a radio inside his cell, and he had dinner with the warden every single Sunday. Another famous feature of Eastern State was Cat, the governor's dog. Legend says that the dog was sent there for murdering the governor's wife's cat. Don't know how to do that. Pet the dog's allowed to freely roam the prison. He was very well liked by the other prisoners, and I personally like to think that he was an effort at reform. We're going to be passing now our stop number 12, the Perelman building, annexed to the Art Museum. When it's coming up on our right-hand side, it started out as the Fidelity Life Insurance Company in the 1930s. It's done in the Art Deco style. Up at the top are golden Egyptian symbols, representing all of the things we would have needed in life insurance, such as the squirrels of frugality, the pelicans of charity, the dogs of fidelity, the possums of protection, and the owls of wisdom. All of the things we need in life insurance. Today, this building is part of the Art Museum, though it has not opened up yet. The main art museum is going to be on our right-hand side in just a moment. We're now going to be approaching up what is normally our stop 15, the art museum, the Rocky Steps, and the Zulu. We're all be able to let you guys hop on for about 5 minutes to take your picture with Rocky, run upstairs, and then come back onto the bus. Before we get there, we're going to get to see Rocky. He's coming up on our right. He was a gift from the actor who played him, Sylvester Stallone, after the premiere of Rocky 3. Cell phone. It stands at 1,100 feet tall and was just completed in 2018. It is the tallest building here. The top 12 floors opened last year. It is the Four Seasons Hotel, where you guys can go to treat yourselves to some luxury and some incredible views of the city, starting at $500 a night. That's why I said you guys. We're soon going to be passing our stop number 17, the Franklin Institute. And that is where you would find our national monument to Ben Franklin. He is not in Washington, D.C. with the rest of them. He's here in Philadelphia. This is where Ben is called home. You do not have to buy a ticket to the Franklin Institute to see the monument to Ben. He's right in the lobby. Check out the free. If you did buy a ticket, you would very quickly find that the Franklin Institute is a science museum. On the inside, they have a giant model human heart that you could literally get lost inside of. They have one of the original Wright brothers planes that was flown by that Grover Cleveland Birdsall guy that you guys saw not that long ago. And they have some of the original lightning rods used by Ben Franklin. This is a really great museum if you have kids traveling with you, but as an adult, you will also have a whole lot of fun in here. There's a lot of interactive stuff going on. To our right-hand side in the distance a little bit, we see Moore College of Art and Design. That was the first college that opened specifically with the intention to teach art to women. Coming up on our right, this sculpture is dedicated to our African American Air Force members. And then in front of us is the Academy of Natural Sciences, the first one to open in the United States. Inside they have 18 million specimens and over 30 different kinds of dinosaurs are represented there. That's where they showed off the first dinosaur found in North America. That's the Hadrosaurus, found in Hatfield, New Jersey, across the Ben Franklin Bridge. That is also where Lewis and Clark came to show off all their findings from their famous expedition. To our left-hand side is a great view, stop number 8, the Cathedral Basilica of St. Peter and Paul. And coming up on our right is a sculpture of a man named Thaddeus Kościuszko. He was a Polish man, a freedom fighter, who came over during the revolution just to help us out because he really believed in our cause. And he was important because he was the man responsible for fortifying many of our forts, including West Point, which was never seized by the British during the revolution, and it became a major turning point for us. After the war was over, our friend Thaddeus went back to Poland to try and help them fight for their freedom from Russia, but he was not as successful there. And then our friend Thaddeus spent 2 years inside of a Russian prison. Later in the tour, we'll get to see the home that he came back to after his time there. To our right-hand side, this little brick building over here is looking kind of out of place. Up until earlier this year, it was a pub called Mesa's Crossings. I mentioned to you earlier that 1,300 buildings were destroyed to make room for the parkway that we're on. And when they were deciding which ones to keep, this little building made the cut. So it originally started out as a carriage house in the 1830s. And then when this area got built up, everything around it changed, but it stayed the same. Unfortunately, the pub did permanently close, but I'm hoping that it'll be something new sometime soon. Maybe another pub or shopping, something cool. As we turn on our right-hand side, you'll see a Gothic-style building. That used to be the Robert Morris Hotel. Robert Morris owned the first presidential won the World Series. When they were building Comcast 2 in 2018, they feared that surge might strike again. And so again, they put a tiny statue of William Penn on top of the building. And our Eagles won the Super Bowl. I didn't know we were going to do that. In front of us, that's Philadelphia City Hall again. In the 1950s, there was the effort to tear down City Hall. People didn't like the French Second Empire style. They wanted a new building. Until they found out that the cost to demolish City Hall would have been more than the cost of the original building and the new building combined. Because this is the largest stone masonry structure in the world. Every one of its 700 rooms is made entirely from brick. There is no steel anywhere inside of the building. Some of the walls are up to 27 feet thick. If we look up top beneath William Penn, there's two other figures. There's a Native American man, and a man who looks like he might be a pilgrim, but he's not a pilgrim. He's a Swedish man. And these are tributes to the people who came here before us. The Native American Lenni Lenape tribe would have been here for 10,000 years before the Europeans settled here. And the Swedish were the first to settle this area. Coming up on our left-hand side at the foot of City Hall, is a statue of a man named Octavius Cato. He's a scholar and an athlete, president of Shady University, and a serious civil rights activist who worked hard in an effort to desegregate Philadelphia's trolley system during his time. Unfortunately, he was killed on Election Day, October 10, 1871, for encouraging African Americans to get out and vote. We just turned onto Broad Street now, also known as 14th Street, also known as the Avenue of the Arts. It's 100 feet wide. It's designed by William Penn in the 1680s. Coming up on our right-hand side, a little brick building called the Union League of Philadelphia. They started out as a political club in 1862 in support of President Lincoln and to combat Southern sympathy during the Civil War. Unfortunately, President Lincoln never got to stay here because it was completed the same week he was assassinated in 1865. Now coming up on our right is the Bellevue Hotel, normally stopped 19. It was done in the French Second Empire style, completed in 1904. Thomas Edison did all the lighting inside of here, and a lot of it is still original. Every president from Teddy Roosevelt to Obama stayed there, and some of their other famous guests include John Wayne and Katharine Hepburn. Now on our right is the Academy of Music, the oldest opera house in America, still the music and opera house today, and they opened up in the 1850s. Coming up on our left, the Wilma at the Aurora Theater. They're a 501c3 nonprofit that puts on student or controversial plays, offering them at a low cost or sometimes free. To our right is the Kimmel Center, our newest performing arts center, home of the Philadelphia Orchestra. They play inside of Horizon Hall in here, which is a giant amphitheater shaped like a kettle. In the distance, we'll get to see the Drake Hotel. They opened up as a luxury hotel in 1929, done by the architects Ritter and Sheng in the Art Deco style. The building directly to our right is the University of the Arts, where Philadelphia's finest artists are trained today. But this building actually started out as an asylum for the deaf in the 1850s, and it was designed by the architect John Haviland. That is the same guy who designed Eastern State Penitentiary. And if you go inside of this building, you can tell.